Welcome back to Combat Mission, where we are going to take a look at urban warfare again, specifically by asking the question, what orders should we use to enter buildings? This comes up in the community every now and again, and there is certainly some interesting advice floating around, so I thought I'd tackle it. To do so, I've set up a really simple test in Shock Force 2. We have two units, an attacker and a defender. The attackers are a US rifle squad of 9 men with the usual smorgasbord of modern infantry weapons. The defenders are a 4-man Syrian recon team armed with AKMs. Everyone is regular experience with no modifiers. The defender's job is to hold a single-story target building. The attackers, starting from behind another building 40 meters away, are going to try and take it. There are 6 infantry movement orders that we can use here: fast, quick, move, slow, hunt, and assault. Fast, quick, and move broadly correspond to running, jogging, and walking. Slow is a crawl, that's not going to be of any use in this context. Hunt is a kind of movement to contact where the troops will stop when they see the enemy. We want to move forward in this test, so that command isn't going to be very useful. Assault is more complex. The unit splits into fire teams and the TAC AI moves forward, approximating a kind of bounding overwatch. This is something that is a lot more effective when micromanaged. I generally consider the assault command to be more trouble than it's worth, but I've included it in the test because we are assaulting a position and it's reasonable for people to expect the assault command to do what it says on the tin. So we have our test. I've run it 10 times for each order, giving us a total of 40 runs. This isn't a good sample size, but it should give us an idea of what we need to focus more closely on. Also important to bear in mind is that this series is about covering the basics. If you have any amount of combat mission experience, you know exactly what's going to happen when our attacking squad goes round that corner. The defenders are ready and waiting, the attackers get shot to shreds almost every time. Out of our 40 runs, the attackers failed to reach the building 37 times. If we plot the location of the casualties, we can see that almost all of the losses take place as the attackers leave cover and come out into the open. Each dot represents a casualty. The colour of the dot corresponds to the colour of the order being tested: orange for fast, yellow for quick, blue for move, and red for assault. And as you can see, it doesn't really matter what orders the attackers are using. But if we have 37 out of 40 failures, we have 3 non-failures. Working out why things went better in those examples is going to help us figure out what's going on. The recurring trend in the failures was that the attackers would suddenly come under fire, take casualties, become suppressed or pinned, and either get wiped out or run away. In all of the non-failures, the defenders' initial fire was ineffective. Whether that's because they were inaccurate, because the attackers shrugged off the suppression, because several defenders stopped firing to reload at the same time, or because, in one instance, the defenders decided to reposition inside the building. Whatever the reason for the decrease in the effectiveness of the defenders' fire, in our non-failures, the attackers were able to take advantage of the drop-off to return fire, swinging the firefight in their favour, and creating the advantage they needed to advance. So the dominant factor in determining whether the attacker succeeded was not which movement order they had, it was the effectiveness of the defender's fire. This is not a movement issue, this is a fire superiority issue. In theory, that means it sounds like a job for the assault command. The attacking squad splits into fire teams which alternately fire and move towards their waypoint. One team suppresses the enemy while the other closes. Due to the setup of our test though, the squad has to go out into the open before they can start fire and movement. Otherwise, the base of fire team will be left behind the start building and not actually see anything to shoot at. Because of the proximity of the enemy, the attackers always took fire as they left the corner of the start building. Looking at the casualty plot, the assault casualties are all clustered on the corner and against the wall because they needed a brief pause to get themselves organised for the assault order. Which is a long-winded way of saying the assault command is not going to cut it. what we need is support by fire from other units. So now we can get into Batch 2. This has two changes. Firstly, the attackers are now supported by a pair of M240 medium machine gun teams who have spent the previous turn suppressing the enemy. They will continue to fire on the target building for another 15 seconds, then stop to avoid friendly fire. The second change is that I've split the attacking squad. Now only one 5-man fire team will try to take the building. This is because it was very common in Batch 1 for all the soldiers to get in each other's way as they were trying to go around the corner. That's important because in Batch 2 we're really examining speed. The faster our attackers can reach the building, the less time the defenders will have to recover from the suppressive effect of the supporting fire. So in theory, fast should do best, then quick, then move. Assault is its own weird thing. Running the test 10 times for each order again, we get a much improved performance from the attackers. They successfully cleared the target building 26 out of 40 times. That makes for 14 failures. 7 of them involved the move command. That neatly fits into our theory. Move is the slowest, the enemy have the greatest amount of time to recover. But after move, it's fast and assault that are tied with 3 failures each. Quick is at the top of the pile with only a single failure. So what's going on here? The fast set had very binary results based on whether or not the defenders opened fire. In the 7 fast successes, the defenders never fired a shot. The attackers entered the building while they were still suppressed, and then shot them all. In the runs when the defenders did open fire, they caught the attackers in the open, and we got the same results as Batch 1 despite the support by fire. Except for in one run when the attackers got inside the building but failed to spot the defenders who proceeded to wipe them out from behind once they'd recovered. With Quick, we only had 1 failure, and that was a failure to suppress by the supporting fire. The attackers immediately took casualties and fell back. Of the successful runs, the defenders failed to open fire twice, but in the remaining 7 times, they did. Most of the time, this involved a single defender recovering and opening fire, by which time the attackers were usually at close range, where they would spot the enemy and rapidly return decisive effective fire. The assault runs should theoretically pan out the same way. We have an organic base of fire element that is maintaining suppression on the target building, but assault failed more often than quick. Only twice more, which is not exactly a solid margin when you have a sample size of 10, but I think it helps highlight an important distinction between different types of fire that we need to consider. Both the supporting M240s and the base of fire team are targeting the objective building with area fire. In combat mission terms, this means they don't have anything specific to aim at, they're just putting rounds into the building. The defenders are spread out across the area being targeted, so some of them will get suppressed more heavily than others based on the random distribution of incoming fire. This explains why, every now and again, the suppressive fire doesn't appear to be that effective and we get the Batch 1 experience. It's variable in effect, especially once we factor in the idea that combat mission models individual soldiers with individual levels of motivation. So getting back to the assault command, because I've given the attackers an area fire order on the building, the level of suppressive fire going out has increased, but it's still variable. When the advancing element is firing on its own initiative, it's because they've spotted the enemy and they have a specific target to shoot at. They're engaging in aimed fire. Obviously, if they hit, then the defenders lose a man and the others get deeper into an emotional event. But if they miss, because the fire is much closer to the target, it has a greater suppressive effect. So although supporting suppressive fires are absolutely critical, we also need to consider that the closing element, the attacking unit that is trying to enter the building, needs to be able to react when they spot the enemy at close ranges. Close range is an important factor here, but it does not necessarily mean inside the building. In our test, the defenders are manning the same side of the building that the attackers are approaching, so they're always at very close ranges where spotting ability greatly increases before the attackers reach the building. There was certainly some fighting and some mopping up inside, but the attackers frequently engaged, suppressed and killed the defenders through the windows or the door within a few meters of the building. And this was usually decisive because close-range fires are more effective. Naturally, it was also decisive for the defenders if they recovered quickly, which speaks to the importance of choosing the right movement command to balance arriving at the building before the suppression has worn off, and maintaining enough situational awareness to deal with the enemy if they recover. So, which movement order is the best for entering buildings? The fast order gives us the best speed, but that speed also makes it harder for the troops to spot targets. Assault is essentially quick with extra steps. The advancing element moves at the quick speed, but the unit as a whole loses time messing around, and the base of fire element is never going to be as reactive as the much closer lead element. Move is out of the picture for what should be obvious reasons. So we're left with quick. This looks like it gives us the best balance. The attackers move fast enough to close the distance rapidly, but they retain the situational awareness they need to engage any enemy troops they encounter. But this is only in the context of supporting fire. We need fire and movement to get to the target building, and of the two, fire is the enabling component. Fire without movement is just indecisive. Movement without fire is suicide. Obviously, the testing I've done here relates to a very specific scenario. If the attackers started closer, spent longer preparing the target building with fire, or brought heavier weapons to bear, then they would find it easier. If the enemy had mutually supporting positions in depth, more men, or a high degree of motivation, then they would find it harder. There are hundreds of variables, and we certainly don't have time to go over them all. But hopefully this video has helped contextualize the problem. Entering enemy-held buildings is not a question of finding the right movement command, it's a question of effectively integrating fire and movement. Getting to the target building alive is almost always much more dangerous than actually clearing it. Quick is probably the best catch-all answer, but fast may be a better option if the wider situation means you don't want your troops pausing in the open to engage. And of course, in true combat mission style, it's also very important to remember that you can do everything right and still have a bad day. So that's another basics video out of the way. If you would like to see these videos early and support the channel, you can do so via Patreon and YouTube memberships. Whether you do or not, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.